This episode is dedicated to the memory of Blake Harrison. You're listening to the Necromaniacs podcast. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Necro Thursday, and you're listening to the Necromaniacs horror podcast. How's it going, Jeff?
It's going good, Mike. How are you? Back from tour.
Yeah, man. I got back a few days ago. Was sick all week long, and I'm happy to say that my voice has finally recovered. I had to like reschedule some stuff as a result of not being able to perform vocally here. So I'm happy that we're able to record today. And you can tell my voice is still not 100%.
Yeah. You sound like you're recovering from a tour sickness. We were just talking a little bit before we hit record about the tour sickness, like that. It happens every tour, where somewhere around the middle point you just feel like shit and you can't seem to get better no matter what you do.
Yeah.
And you're away from home, you're in a van, you're in a backstage, it's the worst environment to be sick in.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I was good up until like we hit Canada. I mean, I was pretty much exercising every day, like eating pretty good, drinking a lot of water, like all that kind of stuff. But then once we hit Canada, it was literally 3 degrees Fahrenheit in Ottawa. So the next morning, or maybe it was in Quebec City, is when I started getting sick. I woke up and I was like, "Uh-oh, here it goes." And
Yeah.
it's just getting run down and not sleeping right, and just the exhaustion that happens from doing this kind of thing for a long period of time. And it just got worse. Like I knew that if I was home and could sleep and take it easy and just get rest, that it probably would have been something that I dealt with within a day or so, but it just stretched on until the rest of the dates. And then when I got home, it put me on my ass for the last few days.
Oh man, that fucking sucks, dude. Sorry. Well, I'm glad you're better and you survived the tour. And it sounds like your tour went pretty well.
Yeah, it was, man. I was telling you, I won't share all the grim details of like some of the mismanagement of the tour, but like, I don't want to be, a complainer about that sort of stuff. But everything besides that was great. The bands were cool. Like people came out to the shows. Met some really cool guys. Don of Nunslaughter was a great guy. Actually, all the guys in Nunslaughter are really cool. And Don is on this week's episode of Everything Went Black. So you can check that out. Yeah. Great guy.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, I always think it's always funny. People would always ask me, like, "Oh, how was tour?" And even though you're gone for a long time. Like when you kind of sum up a tour, it's just like, yeah, it was fine. People came out. It was good. Like there's
Yeah,
never
what
like,
else do you want to know? I mean,
yeah.
everyone thinks that it's like, I mean, it's like Motley Crue or something like that, where like throwing TVs out the hotel windows and there's like groupies everywhere. Like that's just not how it is, man. I mean, I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
funny.
It's such a huge misconception about what it is to be in a band on tour. And, I get that a lot. Like people at work, people I meet, like go find out I was in a band and like, oh, they assume like, just like you said, crazy times, groupies. And I'm always like, you're in a van all day and then you're in a venue and then you have to find something to eat and then you got to play and then you got to go to a hotel or whatever. And then you
Yeah.
repeat. Like it's not really that glamorous, at least on the level bands like ours tour in. We're not on buses or like we don't have the luxury of having like a 10-person crew or whatever. It's hard.
Yeah, I mean, if you were like Vince Neil in the '80s or something like that, I imagine
Yeah.
it's different, because you got people running everything, and he just gets to jump on stage and then go to strip clubs and hang out with strippers and hookers and stuff like that and get drink like Jack Daniels. That's like not the life that I live. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah, and that's if you try to live that kind of life on tour, you're gonna burn out really, really fast when you again like on the level that bands like us tour on
Yeah.
or
But
on in my used to.
there are definitely guys who try to do that though. You know what I mean? Even at
Oh
this
yeah,
level, there's like dudes who we're playing like 300 capacity venues, and there are guys who think that they're, Nikki Six. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's just, I don't know. It's just funny because it's just things don't roll like that at this level.
no, yeah, exactly. They really don't. It seems like every tour there was always one of those guys, you
Oh
know.
yeah. Yeah. At least one, definitely.
Yeah, like they go missing
Yeah.
or
They go
like for
missing. Yeah.
yeah, hours at a time or like you're fucking oh man. But yeah, it's a job like anything else. And if you take it seriously, and you're professional, because we definitely toured bands that like don't show up for sound check, blow off everything they're supposed to do. And yeah, that's not how we rolled. Not at all.
Yeah. Well, I'd have to say I did meet a bunch of the guys out there who listened to this show and everything went black, and or in general, horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse supporters. So that was fucking killer, man, to meet some people.
Yeah, man. I saw some of the photos you posted, and it was cool to put a face to some of these voices or people I've interacted with through Instagram, things like that. And that's awesome. They came out.
Yeah, dude. So a couple of guys I met. There are other people I met who it was so quick that I didn't catch their names or it was too loud. So I
Yeah.
apologize if I don't mention your name on this. There's a dude in Atlanta I'm thinking of specifically who it was like I was carrying a guitar into the venue and like it was a confusing scenario.
Hmm.
And so anyway, Dave from Metal Eater, I met him. I met a gentleman named Andre. I met Todd, and I met
Hmm.
Tavis from Pittsburgh, who's been Dave and Tavis have called in a couple times, and
Yes.
so they're familiar faces, familiar names, and really cool, man. It was kind of like important part of this whole experience is being connected with people, man, and it's just awesome to go out into the world and actually talk to people that are interested in the same things you're interested in and support the show and know about like Necrosphere and Horror Wolf and Soul Knox and listen to all of our other buddies podcasts too.
Yeah. To me, that's the funnest part of doing this is interacting with people who have the same interests that I have. To me, it's fun. I could talk movies all day, and some days I do. I'll go back and forth with people on social media. It's definitely the most rewarding part of doing anything, but specifically this.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun, man. And yeah, just let's start ripping the rest of the year to pieces, man, and just start doing some cool shit. That's made me really motivated to do that stuff.
Awesome. And yeah, that's really great. Sometimes you come home from tour, like you don't want to do shit. It has the opposite effect, but it's good to come back and feel motivated, inspired, and all that good stuff.
Well, speaking of the other horsemen, let's run down our buddies here. So, of course, if you're listening to this show, you know what we're going to say next. You got to go and listen to the rest of the podcasting elite to continue our war against mediocrity. And of course, we're talking about the horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. So, kicking the week off, we've got Horrorwolf 666, brought to you by Brandon Legion. He comes at you twice a month. Up next is Jackie Smith's Into the Necrosphere, literally the only extreme music podcast that I listen to. So take that how you will. After that is Everything Went Black, which is kind of it's always been like a work in progress, that podcast. It sort of
Hmm.
changes over the years. It's not specifically about music. It's not specifically about anything, I guess. So it's more of a reflection of the things that I think are interesting. And that's midweek. And then, of course, Necro Thursday is today. which is Necromaniacs with me and Jeff and Mike Scandato, talk about horror movies and related genres every week. Friday is Spitball Media featuring Mike's brother, John Draper. And that's current events, cultural sort of podcast. Saturday's a day off. Sunday is the second of 2 days where Call Haikara brings you Soul Knocks. And if you're into anything dark, macabre, esoteric, that's the show for you. And he's killing it these days with some great programs and guests and subjects. And he comes at you on Thursday and Sunday. And Carl and I are continuing our Darkness Weaves project, which is the mission statement of that is to raise awareness of the great work of Carl Edward Wagner, a criminally obscure weird fiction, dark fantasy author. And probably his most famous character is Cain, who, next to Conan, is probably the greatest sword and sorcery character ever written, in my opinion. At least. And then running on his own program is Iblis Manifestations, brought to you by Cheyenne of the great band Trivax. I think just recently he had Eric from Watain on there, so that's really cool. And he's been, killing it with, once again, great guests, interesting dialogue, interesting conversations. I had Cheyenne on Everything Went Black a few weeks ago, and just an interesting guy, man, and a great band, and give him your support as well. I mean, he's one of the newer members of our crew, but he's a good friend, and definitely check him out.
Hell yeah.
And that's it, man. We got you covered. You don't have to worry about anything. You stay with us, you'll be okay.
We also have a phone number.
Oh yes, the Necro phone. So if you want to leave us a voicemail, give us a shout. You can hit us up at 908-913-0782. 908-913-0782. And ironically, the first guy we have is Tavis from Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Yeah, great to meet you, bro. Excellent time, man.
What's up, gentlemen? This is Tavis calling in from Pittsburgh. Been enjoying the shows, covering a lot of good stuff. Digging the Argento, deep dive kind of that you guys are doing. So that's cool. Been meaning to watch that new documentary about him on Shudder, but I haven't got around to that yet. But really dug the Hitcher episode yesterday. That's one that's got a special place in my heart. Growing up, remember renting that from the video store. Remember it came in a white clamshell case, and watching that with my dad and stuff. So definitely a special one, on top of being just a great movie. As far as watching new stuff, I'll tell you what, I checked it out on Tubi. It's that movie Hunt Her, Kill Her. Didn't know much about it going into it, and I'll tell you what, it was decent. Has a really good pace. There's some kind of nods to First Blood and Die Hard in there, sort of like a survival hostage type movie. Definitely worth a watch. Like I said, it's on Tubi. And the Hitcher episode also made me think of this movie from 1987, which I always kind of sort of paired with the Hitcher. Is that movie White of the Eye. Pretty cool. From that time. But yeah, Mike, also too, you talk about Wawa. When you're in your travels out here in Western PA, you got to check out Sheets, which I think is superior to Wawa, but I grew up in Western PA, so I am biased. But yeah, great shows, guys, and see you here soon. Bye-bye.
So have you heard that Hunter Killer movie, rather?
I've heard of it for sure. I had not watched it, or his other recommendation, White of the Eye, I think it was.
Yeah.
What about you?
No, I haven't seen either of those, but they're definitely something I've heard of. And yeah, Tubi, man. Tubi is like kind of the Wild West of streaming platforms in some ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I've noticed we have it, or I think we might have always had it. I've just discovered it. It's great.
It's a free service with ads, but you can see some of the most wild stuff on there.
Yeah, I've been watching the first season of Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares back when it was sort of a real show and not this like bullshit reality show it's become. Great stuff. Also want to say, Mike, have you ever watched The Hitcher with your dad?
No, I haven't. No, why?
Well, Travis mentioned that he had fond memories of watching The Hitcher with his dad from when he was a kid,
Wait,
and I thought,
actually, you know something? Let me revise that statement. I think I have because that was a film that we rented on VHS at the house when I was in high school. So my dad probably was there when we watched it.
oh, okay, wow, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
I
let me change that up a little bit.
always tried to avoid watching horror movies with my parents, even though my mom is a big horror movie fan. It'd get kind of uncomfortable when there was, gratuitous nudity and
Sure.
sex and things like that. When you're, 8 to 12 years old, it can feel a little awkward.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like my dad doesn't like horror films, but my mom loves horror movies. So it would be a family thing where we'd rent the VHS tapes and watch them at night. And he would just kind of like endure our whims there, you know.
Yeah, kind of the same situation. My father really, I think he only likes movies about war. Uh,
Yeah. Me too. My dad
not,
too,
yeah,
same way.
not so much a Hitcher fan,
No.
but glad he liked the Hitcher episode.
But one thing I gotta say is I have spent many times, much time at Sheets, the
Ah,
analog to the Great Wawa. Yeah.
I've never heard of Sheets at all. This is totally new to me.
You start seeing Sheets in like Pennsylvania. Like not so much around Philly, but once you start getting deep into Pennsylvania and Ohio is when you start seeing Sheets. And
Okay.
yeah, and it's essentially the same as Wawa. Like you can order sandwiches with the pad, the tablet.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. I haven't been to a Wawa since that's become a part of it. I mean, we're talking like 89, I think 90, something like it's been a long time since
Yeah.
I've
I mean,
been,
Wawa's part of my everyday life here in New Jersey. So yeah,
as
that's
it should be.
yeah, it's a great. I still back Wawa, but Sheets, I fuck with Sheets definitely. They're a great place
Okay.
to go on tour. They have decent coffee, by the way. Which is always like a plus to find a all night place that is something that you can drink coffee wise. So yeah, Sheets is they got fuel, diesel, diesel fuel, which is like
Yeah.
two important things. You'd be surprised how many gas stations don't have diesel.
Oh, no, I know. I used to drive a diesel truck for work, and when you realize you're about to run out of gas and you pull into a gas station and there's no diesel, you really start to realize how not every gas station offers that.
Yeah. And ironically, the night that Tavis and I met in person, I went to Sheets.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm still saying Wawa is king of the American rest stops, but Bucky's is giving it a run for its money.
Oh, dude, Bucky's. That was a whole thing on this tour, man. We went to I think pretty much every Bucky's in the South.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Dude,
fully outfitted with Bucky's gear right now.
I'm wearing a Bucky's hat right now as we're recording
You're wearing a
this.
Bucky's hat right now. That's awesome, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, what the first time you go to a Bucky's is like the most overwhelming thing. There's just so much. But I've been living in Texas long enough where I have like my routine. I have my go-tos. Always kind of get the turkey barbecue sandwich. That's my go-to there at Bucky's. Maybe get some of those beaver nuggets or
Oh yeah.
cookies if I'm feeling a little wild. But yeah, I love it.
Yeah, the food at Bucky's is actually pretty good, man. It's all made fresh there. It's like Southern style shit, like brisket and, things like
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean? Like you can get a burrito, like you can get stuff that you mentioned. And but I have I like got all sorts of gear from there now. I got like a bag, I got a hat, I got t-shirts, all that sort of refrigerator magnet. I'm drinking out of a Bucky's mug right now. And
Yeah,
I
man.
completely outfitted my girlfriend with Bucky's swag too.
Oh man, you
Oh,
got to
and
get the
I'm
lawn
sorry about that.
mascot.
I also forgot that um Ripley, our dog, also has a Bucky's hoodie.
Amazing.
Wait, what's that, babe?
Oh,
What's that? Oh, okay. So yeah, I got him a Bucky's hoodie and a food bowl. Yeah. And then
amazing.
she's got slippers and like t-shirt. We have matching t-shirts. We got like all sorts of stuff like that.
Dude, when people come to visit me here in Austin, that's like a destination. Like everyone who comes to visit wants to see Bucky's. So I keep hearing about it, and it's just crazy that like it's just a convenience store, but it's kind of not.
There's apparently going to be a Bucky's in New Jersey now, what I understand,
Oh,
in on the
wow.
turnpike by New Brunswick. So I think like that's like I think exit 10 or something like that on the turnpike, somewhere down there. They're going to put allegedly put a Bucky's in. That'll be the first one up here in the tri-state area.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll keep the southern kind of thing, or if they'll try to appeal more to where they're at, like more deli sandwiches instead of barbecue.
That's an excellent question, and I think I'm going to make a projection that if you go to every Bucky's has something that's specific to that region of the country that they're in. You know
Mm,
what I mean? So for example, it's different in Florida than it is in Georgia than it is from the Carolinas. Like it's the same, but there'll be some subtle differences of between what they have. So like I imagine if they put one up here in Jersey, it'll be basically the same, but there'll be a couple of other items that are more native to the land.
mm, yeah, pizza or an Italian sandwich, something like that.
Yeah, so some gabagool or something.
Hey, yeah. I don't have shit to do today. Now that when I'm done recording this, I might drive out to Bucky's. Why not?
Dude, go for it. They're clean bathrooms, like all that stuff.
Very, very important also when you're traveling.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so enough about Bucky's. Up next we got Jason from Seattle.
Hey, Necromaniacs. This is Jason from Seattle. I called a couple of times before, but been away, broken phone, personal things, blah, blah, blah. But I really liked your episode on The Hitcher. Super underrated movie. Jennifer Jason Leigh doesn't get enough credit in that movie. I was really happy to hear you guys talk about it. No one I talk to ever thinks it's a good movie, but I think it's a classic. I was going to make a recommendation for one, an early 80s one, The Sender. I don't know if you've seen it or not. Kind of a weird psychological movie, like a little supernatural. Really, really strange movie about a teenage kid who's lost his memory, but also has like a telepathy, if I remember correctly. I just watched it last night. I think that's the term. Really weird, really good. Anyway, hope you guys are well. Take care, and thanks for doing this podcast. I love it. Bye.
Thanks for returning to our little show here and listening to us. And life happens sometimes, man. So I get it. It's cool. You can drop off for a little while as long as you come back. But The Sender, man, that rings a bell, doesn't it? I haven't seen it,
It,
but it rings a bell.
yeah, I haven't seen it either, but when he said the title and started describing it, I thought, "No, maybe I have seen it, but if I have seen it, it was a long, long time ago. But it sounds like something we'd be interested in. Absolutely.
No, totally, totally. So yeah, hit us back if you guys want to make recommendations or commentary. Please use that number and leave us a voicemail. Have you been checking anything out recently, Jeff? Anything interesting?
Yeah, I think last time we talked, I was doing a Mad Men rewatch, which I'm still in the middle of. I'm on season 5 right now, and man, I don't know. Mad Men is giving Sopranos a run for its money as my favorite TV show of all time.
Okay, interesting. I've only seen like maybe 1 or 2 seasons of that show, so I'll probably revisit it at some point.
I think, Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit older now than when it aired, and I just start to notice different things about the show on this rewatch, and I just find it far more fascinating than I originally did. I did like it, but now I'm just starting to notice all like this great foreshadowing, this great overall themes that I might have missed the first time around. It really is an incredible show. It's not just a soap opera about the '60s. It's so much more than that. I love it. Hopefully, in another 10 years, I'll do another rewatch. Uh, so that's been taking up most of my time. But there's a couple other things. We watched, and by we I mean my girlfriend and I, Taryn. We watched the Blob from 1988.
Dude,
Yeah.
I also rewatched that.
Oh, okay. It's on Tubi.
Yeah. Yeah. I also rewatched that, man. So it's interesting that you did too.
Yeah. What did you think? Because it had been years since I'd seen this, maybe since the early '90s.
I've always repped that movie.
Mm.
I always really like the remake. It's a Frank Darabont production.
He wrote it, yes.
Yeah, and it's you'll recognize some of the characters, some of the actors from Walking Dead, and of course Kevin Dillon's in it. And yeah, so I mean Kevin Dillon, I like Kevin and Matt Dillon. I think they're great,
I
you
do.
know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Even more, I like more was Kevin Dillon's shirt he wore throughout the whole film.
Oh yeah, totally.
What the
Um,
fuck was that thing?
it was cool, man. Dude, I think it's a great sort of like drive-in style remake of a classic movie with Steve McQueen in it. And I dug it, man. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, it knows exactly what it is, and it's the movie is a lot more like cruel and mean spirited than
Yeah.
I remember. I mean, it kind of has some parallels with the film we're going to discuss later. That like you get to know these characters, you think they're going to be a big part of it, and nope, they're dead.
Yeah.
Um,
And this may or may not even have been intentional, but I I'm so like entrenched in like cosmic horror and like weird fiction that I was watching The Blob this time around and I'm like, wow, that's like actually kind of like a rendition of a Shoggoth from like
mm.
Lovecraftian sort of creature, you know?
And that coming from Frank Darabont, I'm sure he probably had that in mind. I'm not sure about the original film. I've only seen the original Blob once, also a long, long time ago. No, don't remember it well.
Yeah,
But
basically the original Blob looked like the cranberry sauce that you eat at Thanksgiving.
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
anyway,
It looked a little
so
silly in this movie, but I think it was intentional, like paying homage to the original Blob in some of the shots.
yeah, but yeah, it's funny that you watched that as well. So yeah,
Yeah, my lady really wanted to watch it. I thought, oh yeah, it's been a while. Other than that, I said last episode I picked up some Criterion Blu-rays. I watched some of them. Terry Gilliam's Baron Munchausen, such a fascinating movie. Uh, the story of the production of the movie is almost more interesting than the film itself. About going over budget and Terry Gilliam basically being a madman. But man, every penny that was spent is up on the screen. It is just such a great imaginative movie that's kind of for kids, but more for adults. I guess I would say it's one of my favorites from Mr. Terry Gilliam.
that's a good one, man. I should rewatch that one as well.
It looks great. Criterion Collection. I mean, come on, they never let you down. They always put out really quality stuff.
Yeah.
And other than that, no. I mean, on the musical front, I've been listening to the last Sonic Youth album a lot lately. I don't know. That was a band I just ignored for 20 years. I don't know. And then we played a festival with them like in 2007 or something. I was like, oh, I was wrong about Sonic Youth. This is good. And I don't know. Lately, I've just been on a Sonic Youth kick. Strange.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan. I mean, I have Sonic Youth records,
Yeah.
but I just basically hear like a bunch of dudes who don't know how to play their instruments the right way. And and an incredibly weak ass drummer, and Kim Gordon, who's cool.
Yeah, yeah. That was kind of how I felt about Sonic Youth until that show that I saw on that, and but yeah, but it just been on a bender for them, which I've never really done. I never really went through a Sonic Youth phase, you know.
Yeah.
What about you, man? What have you been checking out?
Well, the Blob, which we just discussed, and then
Yeah.
our quality control manager, Rennie Resmini, recommended a film called The Monolith, which is
Mm.
available for rent on Prime, and I quite enjoyed that. It was basically it's about a journalist who's kind of like fucked up in her career, and now she has a podcast, and it's one of these investigative paranormal style podcasts, and she's interviewing all these people, and it's all dialogue, dude, which you know how I feel. I love all that, like
Yeah, that's your
very
jam.
claustrophobic. It's like she's basically by herself most of the time, and it sounds boring, but it's actually really compelling. And it's just people talking about these bizarre black bricks that show up in their lives and that have this like incredibly dark energy about it, and things happen to them.
Mm.
And it's very much a Thomas Ligotti style story.
Mm.
Very much like in that weird modern weird fiction sort of genre, I would say. And yeah, it's great. I really enjoyed it. And maybe we can talk about it at some point, but I thought it was good, quiet movie, very obviously low budget because there's not a lot of effects in it.
Mm.
Deals a lot with just liminal spaces and like weird, uncomfortable stuff, you know?
That sounds right up my alley, and I have
Yeah, dude.
never heard of this.
Yeah, you can thank Rennie for that. So yeah, that's something I definitely back. Um, and then I finished True Detective when I came back from tour. And
Okay, yes.
oh my God, what a total piece of shit that was.
You know, I still haven't watched it. I will get around to it, but man, the discourse around this season has just been absolutely insane. Like it's either the best thing in the world or it's complete garbage. And most of what I've been seeing has been saying people saying how disappointed they were with this season.
Dude, you're playing yourself if you think this was good. You know, it's like you're either got an envelope from HBO to say something good about it, or you're completely delusional if you like this show. And like, I mean, dude, all right, instead of trying to tell a compelling story, Issa Lopez went for a half-assed, virtue signal filled commentary on corruption and like toxic masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
And
like,
yeah, at this
and
point, that's almost like a tired trope.
it is tired, bro. It's like, yeah, I get it. Men do fucked up things. It's been like
Sure.
I'm not saying that it's cool to abuse women or anything like that, but like this was so completely forced, and it was almost like the pieces were forced into the narrative and the narrative flowing naturally. And one of the strengths of like the Pizzolatto version of True Detective is that the characters were interesting and they're multidimensional and layered. And the two female leads are basically just two-dimensional cutouts of toxic males without penises, essentially.
Okay, all right. And then, so, I mean, it's Jodie Foster too, who's always great, and it's terrible when she's wasted, you know.
Yeah, she's a great actress. Yeah, and like I don't know, there's just like there's subtle things in there too, where it's like there's this scene in the beginning where there's like a police call because some guy got attacked by this woman, and apparently there's a history of violence between the two of them. So the native Navarro, she shows up, and instead of arresting the woman, she like beats up the guy who's like the actual victim in the crime.
Jesus,
And I'm
wow.
like, I mean, is that even like, isn't that like, like, how is that like cool to do that? You're a cop, so you beat up the victim. And I don't know. It's just like, and then over the course of several episodes, there's scenes of her just like basically harassing this guy who obviously is a piece of shit, but like,
Right.
so it's okay to be police harassment is fine as long as it's justified by the guy being a toxic male, you know?
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know it's just really uncomfortable like messaging with that. And but on top of all that garbage, it just was a poorly written piece of shit. It was like pandering to the first season fans, and
Yeah.
apparently the storyline wasn't even intended to be a true detective story. It was something that she'd worked up, and then HBO is like, oh, can you make this into True Detective?
Wow. And there's going to be a sequel to this season, right?
Oh, great.
That's what I just saw. Well, I don't know if it's a direct sequel to this season, but it's going to be Isa Lopez again doing season. I guess would be season 5.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
really a shame, man. Like, and Nick Pizzolatto is not uh shy about showing his disappointment in where True Detective has gone.
Yeah, I saw some post that he made, and in the accompanying photograph, he's got like no shirt on and like sunglasses. I'm like, yeah, of course they picked that picture to illustrate him, you know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, like he doesn't do himself a lot of favors. Ever since the first interview I read with him, I was like, this guy seems kind of like a tool. But there's no denying, season True Detective is his show, and with the absence of him, it's basically fan fiction.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But then again, one of the things that is interesting though, and that's not necessarily bad because like if you think about weird fiction in general, and I kind of do consider True Detective season 1 to be a weird fiction story because
Sure.
there's a lot of psychological elements to it that would play into something that maybe like Thomas Ligotti would have written.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, so it's like the same way that people take the Yellow King and Lovecraft and expand on it and they create pastiche pieces. They could have done that with True Detective if they had like a competent writer. Like if they had
Right.
like Benson and Moorhead do season 4 or something like that.
Oh
You would have
wow.
had something totally different but awesome. And it wouldn't even have been like the first season. It would have been their own thing, but you would have been like, okay, I get it, you know?
Right. The thought of that and Benson and Moorhead doing True Detective, that would be fucking incredible. So yeah, I agree with you. Like, something like that can be cool because I mean, how many people have basically done Lovecraft fan fiction and it's been great.
Yeah,
Stephen
totally.
King's best short story, Crouch End, is Lovecraft fan fiction,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but sometimes it can go horribly wrong.
No, totally, and but Benson and Moorhead, probably because they're men, in this stage, because no one likes Issa Lopez's work. They have a hard hill to climb to do something like that.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see. Hopefully that show can return to its former greatness. I don't know. But I haven't seen it, so I um can't really speak to it myself. I may like it. It doesn't sound like I'm going to,
Yeah.
but I
Well,
am gonna watch it.
there's only 6 episodes, so
Yeah,
you have to just sit through that. So,
it's usually what, 8? There were 8 episodes in the first couple seasons.
I believe you're right about that. Yeah.
Okay, 6. Okay, I one thing I also read, I mean, is people saying that they left a lot dangling or tried to wrap up too much in too short of a time. So I thought, why not do the regular 8 episodes? It must have been some sort of budget thing. I don't know.
I don't know, man. It's like they should have did no episodes if you ask me, man. You know.
Oh man,
But
yeah.
dude, you watch it, just the climax is the most ridiculous wrap up to any story, completely like laughable and just terrible.
Can't wait.
Yeah. So that brings us to this week's feature film.
Yeah.
Uh, Threads, September 23rd, 1984. The original working title for this film was Beyond Armageddon.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds like the title of like an 80s thrash album, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I can imagine that being like a Def Leppard album or two.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a UK Australian production, written by Barry Hines and directed by Mick Jackson. a program length of 112 minutes. So it's on the long side.
Mm,
Yeah.
yes, it
Uh,
is.
just gonna run through a couple of cast here. You know, we have Paul Vaughn as the narrator, Karen Meager as Ruth, Reese Dinsdale as Jimmy, and then her family, or the Kemp family, basically.
Mhm.
Jimmy Kemp's family. David Breardley as Bill Kemp, Rita May as Rita Kemp, Nicholas Lane as Michael Kemp, and Jane Hazelgrove as Allison Kemp. And then at the end, there's kind of like two sections of the film. And then there's Victoria O'Keeffe as Jane, Lee
Mhm.
Daly as Spike, and Marcus Lund as Gaz.
Mm.
So yeah. Um, Grim movie. You guys asked for it, uh, and we're delivering. So here you go.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, what is your history with this movie? Is this something you grew up with, or is this something that's new to you?
Well, I remember in the 80s, there's a whole bunch of movies that came out. The Day After being the one that was like the ABC TV movie.
Right.
Um, that was I watched that when I was very young, and and that scared the hell out of me because there's so many younger folks out there. The 80s, it felt like any day we were going to drop people going to drop nuclear weapons on us like any day now. That was the
Yeah.
vibe all through high school and grade school, was that we were on the brink of total annihilation because it was a very tense scenario between the USSR and the United States. So movies like this were like very, very intense. And there was another animated film called Where the Wind When the Wind Blows.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was just depressing shit, man. Just like not entertaining at all. Scary, uh, gave you nightmares. Um, so then I heard about Threads, but like back in the 80s, it was not something you could watch. Like I don't recall this ever seeing this on like VHS or anything like that.
Yeah, no, me neither. But I feel like I've been aware of this movie forever. Before streaming, I found out about movies, horror movies, particularly through reading books about the subject, and
Yeah.
Threads came up a lot. I distinctly remember that image of the cop or security guard with the bandage across his face, across his eyes, and the more I read about the film, the more I thought, yeah, this not for me. Like this stuff has always bothered me. Just the films you mentioned and growing up in the 80s, and you're right, that was a very real fear we grew up with. I mean, I was a bit too young to fully grasp um, this idea, but it was always there, and it was very scary.
Yeah, it's not something that's entertaining at all, and it seemed real. Like it seemed like it was about to happen, and
Yeah,
that fear was something that was very much baked into our society back then, you know.
absolutely. And this film is like the captures that so well. It
Yeah.
really does.
Now, apparently, and I've never seen this one either. There was a movie from the 60s called The War Game, which was like some Academy Award winning production. And that was another UK film. And that was like apparently one of the inspirations to doing this Threads film.
Okay, yeah. There's also kind of different, but do you ever see Grave of the Fireflies, the Studio Ghibli cartoon about
No, but I'm aware of what you're talking about. Yeah, because like my friend Therese is big into Studio Ghibli stuff, and we talked about that.
right. And I mean, I thought Threads was going to be something more like that, more about this how this story of people struggling after a war, things like. But this movie isn't that. Like, it takes a very different turn somewhere around the hour mark, where it almost, this might be a weird comparison, but it kind of reminded me of watching Skinamarink.
See what you're saying? Yeah, yeah,
Okay, good. All right.
yeah.
Yeah, it just
No,
sort
no,
of
yeah,
becomes this thing you take in, and it's just there's no more story. It's just images. I had the same sort of like feeling watching that. Like it was a very interesting approach. This wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It was so much worse. Not meaning that the movie was bad, but just as hard to take.
yeah.
Um, I told you off air. I watch every movie we're about to do twice usually. If we're going to talk about it, I'll watch it just once just to take it in, and then I'll watch it again, take notes, notice some things maybe I missed the first time. And I gotta say, man, as soon as the credits started to roll, I thought there was no way I was gonna ever watch that again.
Yeah, dude, it's a hard one, a rough one, and it's funny because like this morning Tina was like, "Oh, what are you guys talking about today?" I'm like, "Threads." And she's like, "You watched that?" I thought we were going to watch that together, and I'm like, "I gotta trust me, we're not."
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to see this movie, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not like, snuggle up on the couch with a blanket and popcorn kind of movie. You really do feel like you've been through the ringer after at least I did
Yeah.
after I watched this. I thought, I'm old enough now. I'm sure I can handle something like this. Movies don't really bother me like they used to, and this really got to me in a way I did not expect it to.
Well, there's the movie's kind of broken up into three sections. I think we were, kind of hinting at that. Um,
Mm,
there's the beginning before the attack, which is not necessarily a contemporary dramatic narrative because it has like a half documentary feel to it, and then a half,
yes.
and it's cut in with like dramatic sections of uh Ruth and Jimmy, where like these two young people and their families, and then also these government officials preparing for a possible catastrophe, some nuclear attack, getting the logistics put together. And but there's this feeling of inevitability that's happening. I mean, obviously, because you're watching a movie and there's going to be an attack, but there's just like this very intense feeling of escalation throughout the entire first third of the film.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the the story of Jimmy and Ruth is an interesting, probably the most interesting of the perspectives, because that would be, how we would experience this. Like, there's this looming threat, but you got to live your life.
Yeah.
Like, Jimmy gets Ruth pregnant, and they're talking about moving in together and starting a life, and it's sort of about how the universe is just completely indifferent to your plans and
Oh yeah,
needs.
totally. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a very pessimistic sort of vibe. And I mean, when I say pessimistic, I mean in like kind of Schopenhauer like way. Um, yeah, and the funny thing about the pregnancy, Ruth's pregnancy, when Jimmy mentions it to his family, like they ask him what his plan was, and he's like, "Well, we're going to get married." And they're like, "Well, why? Have you thought about having an abortion?" Which is completely not what I expected when I watched this. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
older guard family members are like, "Don't get married, have an abortion. You're young," you know. And possibly the only moment of humor in the movie happens around that time where like the young kid was like, "What's an abortion?" And the mother's
Yeah.
like, "Don't worry about it. Play your game. It's got nothing to do with you."
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I didn't even think that's because I had it written down. This movie is completely void of humor, but I had forgotten about that. There's
Yeah.
also kind of a weird sleeping with someone he meets at a bar, sort of a British townie or whatever kind of girl.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Uh, again, like it kind of sets up something that never happens. I thought, okay, this is going to be about their lives after the bomb's been dropped and the drama surrounding that, but it is not that at all.
No, no. But it is kind of about Ruth's story though, in a lot. I mean, she's, it is
Yeah,
sort of the story is kind of told through her experience. you know?
Yeah. I mean, exactly. Even though there's not really a lot of her in the second half of the movie, and hardly any dialogue even.
Yeah. So, things are escalating. It's a conflict between the United States and Russia, or the USSR at that time, and the playing field is the Middle East, Iran, which was like
Hmm.
a hot spot back in the 80s, for that sort of thing. Um, and then there's moments even with the government officials where, the one guy's talking to his wife and she's like, "Oh, you don't think anything's gonna happen?" He's like, "Oh, no, we're just preparing or whatever." And he has like the war book, volume 1 and 2, which is
Yeah.
like a manual of what to do in a situation like that, which has never been experienced by anyone really. And I just thought that was like, I don't know, like equally as depressing thinking about, oh, someone wrote a manual on what to do in case there's a nuclear attack, which is like, of course someone did, but
Right.
what good is that going to do anybody?
Yeah, and that shows just how all that goes, completely goes out the window when it does happen. There's also a nice shot of like one of those guys looking at a picture of their wife on his
Yeah.
desk, and that shot just tells you so much. You just know he's looking, knowing like she's dead, everyone's dead.
Yeah.
Um, Such a powerful moment in a movie with so many powerful moments and images.
So the attack comes pretty much out of nowhere, too. I mean, uh,
Yes.
Jimmy's working his construction job, and he's with his buddy there, that guy that he looks kind of like Ozzy Osbourne's like cousin or something like that.
Yeah, both these guys look kind of familiar to me.
Yeah, Jimmy looks like he played bass in Joy Division, and
I was gonna. He looks like Sean Harris too, the guy who played Ian Curtis in
yeah,
24 Hour Party People.
yeah, and his buddy looks like he was like a roadie for Black Sabbath in like the
Yeah,
early '70s or something.
that is perfect. That's exactly what they look like.
Before they became long hairs, like one of those guys.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. But
um,
yeah. So it comes out of nowhere. He's working his job, and Ruth is with her family because at that point she's very much with child.
yes, yeah, and yeah, the attack happens, and sort of treated to a montage of really horrific images, and that kind of add to the documentary feel of this because it looks like what you're seeing is real, and this is a made for BBC production. I had to imagine they must have used a lot of stock footage, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So effective where I was like, wait, hold on a second. Was there actually a nuclear attack like in the 80s that they're using? You know what I mean? Like it seemed like so realistic to me.
Yeah, exactly. And if you've ever been to Sheffield, you could understandably mistake it for something that had been attacked during a nuclear war.
Oh
Have
yeah,
you ever?
dude. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I've been
you've
there.
been, right?
Well, a lot of the UK. I mean, if you remember, I mean, the Germans bombed the shit out of the UK, and like a lot of it has that, post-apocalyptic, rebuilt sort of vibe to it.
Yeah, there's something I've always found a little uh, the oppressive nature of being in the UK. Just something feels wrong to me. Like you said, liminal spaces. A lot of the UK seems like that to me, particularly Sheffield. We used to play there on tour back in the day, and that town always gave me a vibe of just like I don't know. I felt unease, unsettled every time I was there.
Sheffield, Manchester too has some similar sort of Birmingham, like all those towns have
Yeah.
like that sort of vibe of just like gray liminal spaces.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do love the UK though. Just want just want to make that clear.
Yeah, I'm not talking shit, Brits. I love England, and
Yeah,
I
love
but
it.
but yeah, you gotta admit it's a little grim over there.
Hey. um, yeah, and this is Jimmy. is Jimmy survives the initial attack and drives off because he's got to get to Ruth. And if I'm not mistaken, that's the last we see of Jimmy.
Yeah, he just disappears, man. Which probably is like how like a lot of these people ended up like, this devastating attack. And if you're not wiped out in the initial firestorm, you probably will die through a fire or something like that, or like something will, or the impending fallout, which is like a slow,
Right.
insidious death that most people were overcome with.
Yeah. I mean, and it deals with it in such a matter-of-fact way. This movie doesn't pull at your heartstrings through, human drama. It just shows you images, horrific images. And
Well,
just
they
like that,
also they back it up with some facts and figures, where these projections of like
right.
how much particulate was put into the atmosphere and what that does, and what the temperature drop was and how that affects the vegetation and the crops and everything, and how they had this series of I think it was still photos where they show the atmosphere and they show it just this blanket of gray clouds, and it's just like, damn, that's like so heavy.
It is. It is so heavy. And there's even a moment, I think it's Ruth's mom, that shows her after the attack, and she just looks completely fucked up. Her hair's
Yeah,
falling out, her
yeah.
skin is bubbling, and she said, "I wish I died." And yeah, I wrote it down. Is dead better? Wouldn't it be better to die than survive that and live? The movie has an interesting structure where it goes like, a few days later, then it goes a few more days later, then months, then years. And yeah, as the movie progressed, I was thinking to myself, I probably would have rather gone in the initial attack than to just go on like this.
Yeah, yeah, and let's talk a little bit about that mid period of just the impressionistic part of the movie, where it's just
Mm.
images of despair and desolation, and just like the scenes of like the death and the dead bodies and the burning bodies. It's just like it just has like such a bleak feel to it, where you're just like, yeah, we're all just material, there's like no spirit anywhere. There's just material, and that's all we are. We're just burning bodies next to rubble.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's one shot too of just it looks like a freshly dead person who's on fire, and that really just sent a chill down my spine. Such a powerful image. And of course, I think it's a kind of a famous shot from the movie of a woman covered in dirt holding a charred dead baby.
Yep. Yeah, that's
Uh,
like a image they use for this film. Yeah.
right. Man, I, like I would say the middle of this movie is the hardest to watch, but really it's the last hour. It is relentlessly grim.
Yeah. Well, the part that it does become like Skinnamarink, like you were saying, where it's just like these long moments of just images with no dialogue and stills, and one brutal image after another. And in some ways it reminded me of Mad God too,
Mm,
that film that came out last year, where it's like
right.
these like sort of Malthusian images of hell and desolation and evil, and to me it was like watching Skinnamarink cross with like Mad God in some ways.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, where it's like it just takes on this like super natural sort of vibe to it, because what you're looking at is so unbelievably dark and grim.
Right. Like, like it says, the movie kind of jumps forward days to months, and instead of things getting better, they seem to be getting worse. The only currency is basically food.
Yeah.
And so if you survive the attack, you maybe died from radiation. If you survive that, maybe you died from starvation or were
Yeah.
murdered. There's some sort they do hint there's some sort of, I don't know, they're government agent or whatever, but they're kind of like trying to keep people in line.
Yeah.
And it's all just, everything has gone to complete shit. Uh
Yeah.
and of
There,
course,
there's
yeah,
it appears that there is some sort of organization trying to maintain order, but not doing a very good
yeah.
job.
No, they're doing a terrible job. And and it jumps forward after that. You see little signs of progress, but it's not hopeful at all. It's
No.
very grim. Like I think they show like there's electricity again at some point, and children are learning through old VHS tapes.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, let's like get down to that part of the film where
mm.
so Ruth has the baby,
Oh, and she
Jane.
looks terrible, by the way. I think that this is at the 10 years have passed, and
Yeah,
she's probably in her, what, like early to mid 30s. She looks like she's
yeah,
in her 60s.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. She's like gray and all used up looking, and so that's like 10 years later, and her daughter is a young teen at that point, and
Hmm.
um and they show them working in a field. So my theory is that whatever like skeletal version of government was left has like turned into this kind of authoritarian system where people are just working, trying to
Right.
like get some sort of like program together. So Ruth is out in this tilling this field and she just drops, you know, in her place. And that's
Yeah.
and then there's a scene with her and her daughter. And her daughter, like at this point, the English language has degenerated into like just this
Yeah.
completely different dialect, you know?
Yeah. It's almost animalistic or barbarian. Like we've kind of gone back to the Stone Age in a lot of ways.
Yeah, yeah. And Ruth passes away, and Jane is left on her to her own devices, so
And
she's yeah,
Jane feels that there's no emotion when Ruth dies. It almost feels like it's a relief for her to die. And
yeah,
Jane isn't crying for her mom or anything like that. She's just sort of, okay, that's over. Like there's kids who are born into this are a different kind of human being now. Like you said, like they don't communicate with traditional language. This is all they've ever known, and God, how horrible is that?
yeah, yeah. They're in this bleak, barbaric world. So there's scenes of Jane and these two other guys, Gaz and what's the other dude, Spike, whatever his name is,
Yeah.
and they're stealing food, running wild in the countryside. Uh, then of course one of them gets shot, and then there's
Yes.
a struggle over food, which turns
Mm.
into Jane being raped by one of the guys, and
Yeah,
which is probably a fact of life in this society that they're in.
I would imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. We're spared the graphic nature of that, fortunately. So it just kind of. Like off screen.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So Jane goes to one of these medical facilities that seems to be these like makeshift medical facilities to birth her child, and that's the conclusion of the film. The climax is she gives birth to this baby. You get a very quick glimpse of it, but not enough to really see what it looks like.
Right.
And they just give her this like swaddle, this bloody swaddle of and to her arms, and then she pulls back to take a look at the baby. There's just the very beginning of a look of horror on her face in a freeze frame, and then the movie's over.
Yeah. The movie is mercifully over at that point. When the credits started to roll, I thought, thank God, like that was so draining. And that last shot, what do you think she's screaming about? Like, I wasn't sure what to make of that.
Well, all right. If you notice, the baby's not crying,
Right.
right? So I think that the baby was dead, number one. And number
Yeah.
two, I think the baby was most likely completely like deformed.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of what I was thinking. And they don't show you. And again, the what you come up with in your head is probably far worse than what they could show you. I
Yeah.
mean, and that's
Yeah.
how it ends. I mean, it's just over. The
Yeah.
matter of fact nature of this is so brilliant. I mean, this director, you know what he did after this? He made the Kevin Costner movie, The Bodyguard.
Oh man. Yeah, they needed to clean his palate after this for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a strange, like, I mean, they couldn't be more different. I would never think the person who did this did the fucking Whitney Houston, Kevin Costner film, The Bodyguard. Yeah, while the credits were rolling, I had so many thoughts, but it was like, why make this? Like, what exactly? No one's going to get any sort of enjoyment out of something like this.
No,
I'm,
that's a good point. It's like, but there was a rash of these films made though around that
yeah,
time. And I think
exactly.
it was like an expression of just the anxiety and fear of being annihilated by nuclear weapons, and that was like, it was the Cold War. Like, there was, everything was tense, even music. There was like, there was that Age of Quarrel Cro-Mags record with the Mushroom Cloud on the cover, and like,
Right.
all these like thrash bands were talking about nuclear annihilation, and it was like it was in almost in every aspect of popular culture. There was this fear of, humanity being exterminated by nuclear weapons. That was like a huge thing.
Horror really has always been very good about reflecting the fears of the time. Uh, if you watch a movie even from 15 years ago, you might recognize some things that maybe you didn't pick up on the first time. This is obviously more overt, like a nuclear destruction. Um, so I guess maybe, they thought they had something to say, like this was some sort of important warning at the time
Yeah, I mean,
that, hey, this
and
could happen.
yeah, and it is presented almost like a public service announcement too.
Absolutely. And I feel like we're seeing more films are coming this year and about civil wars and things like that, which will obviously be looked at, 10, 15 years from now as a reflection of the fears of the time, things we were
Yeah,
afraid of in
sure.
2024.
Yep. No, totally.
Yeah.
So what grade do you give this film?
Oh boy. I give it a 5. Uh, because I mean it is one of the most effective things I've ever seen. I mean, this for something made in the 80s, it feels very like this could have been made today. It's very good, but I did not enjoy watching this at all. And as the longer it went on, the more I just wanted it to be over. And I haven't felt like that. I don't feel like that a lot watching movies where I let them really get to me, but this did. And for that alone, I think it's worth a 5.
Yeah, I give it a 5 too. And similar, it was important to see it, definitely. It's an important movie. Uh, Nothing enjoyable about it, but it was like effective and very much like something that people should watch the film for sure.
Yeah, and again, the power of streaming, that this movie has been put back into people's consciousness. Like you said, people have been really asking for us to talk about this. And I think it's great that it's out there for people to see, because I really do think it's something you need to watch. It doesn't pull any punches. It does not try to hide the horrors. It throws it right there, in your face, and it's I mean, wow, it was just incredibly powerful.
And also, like I think even in today's society too, where people like that nuclear fear is not
Hmm.
so much in the consciousness, and it should be actually right now, because we're probably
Yes.
closer to nuclear annihilation more now than we were back in the 90s for sure,
Yeah.
or even 10 years ago. And people throw around these like flippant, comments about nuclear war and Russia and all this stuff and Vladimir Putin and and it's like, yeah, this could happen and it could be exactly like this movie shows. And do you want that? So, you know, pay attention and be advised. That's all I can say about it, really.
Absolutely. Another thing that struck me while watching the film and thinking about it in today's context, all the things people hold so important that you argue about all day on social media, they all go right out the window in an event like this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think people should think about that more. Like, how important is it really that I get on Twitter and start screaming about, I don't know, pick a fucking topic that everyone's upset about, like you were saying about True Detective, toxic masculinity, and virtue signaling. Boom, that stuff. It's all gone because really, it doesn't matter. These things that you hold you're so passionate about, and not that they're not important, but like when you break it down to the bare essence of survival, like this stuff, it doesn't matter, and we're all on this planet sharing the experience of being alive, and people would do well to remember that we're all here for a short amount of time. We didn't exist for an eternity. Here we are, and soon we go back to not existing. So we all have that in common, and maybe we should treat each other that way.
I couldn't agree more. So yeah, that's a very well put, dude.
Thank you. I don't know what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. um, but yeah, I mean, this is the kind of feelings I felt after watching it. It wasn't like you shut it off and you go like, oh, all right, that's over with. I guess I'll go, do something. It stays with you all
Yeah.
day. I thought
No,
about this all day
yeah, it's not
after.
like you watch this movie and you're like, all right, what's for dinner? It's like
Yeah.
you kind of think about it for a while.
Yeah, it's like I was like, what do I do to cleanse my palate after that? Maybe I should watch The Bodyguard with Whitney Houston. I don't know. But man, this is a absolute must see. You will not enjoy it, but you must see it.
And it's out there on Shutter, which most of you guys probably have a subscription to Shutter. So check it out while it's on there, because they for licensing reasons they go through. There's a cycle for these things, but right now it's
Mm.
currently on Shutter. So try it out. Definitely go watch this, and you know, try to watch it before you listen to this too. And
Yeah.
let us know your thoughts, man. Definitely. Drop us a line on the Necro phone or comment or whatever, or hit us up, direct messages or whatever. I definitely am interested to see what other people think about this movie.
Yeah, me too. Especially since a lot of people wanted us to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we did, because I don't know that I would watch this had it not come up for a discussion to do an episode on. Because ever since I've been reading about this movie forever, and I've always been sort of afraid to see it.
Me too, man.
And
I've been
yeah,
afraid to watch this movie.
yeah,
And Mike,
and
Mike wanted no part of this one, actually, if you remember.
yeah, which is I couldn't believe it, but hey, I don't blame him one bit. I
Yeah.
mean, shit, yeah. I'm glad I saw it in a weird way, because like I said, it affected me so deeply. But man, like it's going to take a while for this to get out of my head. This is like the first time I watched Requiem for a Dream and just
Yeah.
felt utterly destroyed emotionally after I saw that. This is exactly what that was like.
Yeah, I would put that up there, Requiem for a Dream and Martyrs too. Like the ending of Martyrs is sort of heavy like this too.
Yeah, there's like a select few horror movies that can really, or any kind of movie really, that can really get under your skin and stay there for a long time. Like the Mount Rushmore of that, yeah, Requiem for a Dream, this, Martyrs. Those are the big three I can think of. I'm sure there's others.
Well, thank you for steering us into the direction of doing this film. And thanks for listening, everybody. And yeah, go out there and have a great day. And try to do something nice for yourself after watching this movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys, take care.
Bye.
All you think better stop to face reality.